Well, welcome everybody. Another Wednesday Lunch and Learn. Today's is going to be fun. We have a lot of controversy on this topic. There's a lot of camps that believe that things are good, and other things that people think are not so good when it comes to breakfast. So the question today is simply to breakfast or not to breakfast. That is in fact the question. So let's kind of jump in. It is undoubtedly the truth that America has a weight problem. In fact, we were talking last night at an event that I was speaking at, and 74% of our population is overweight, as you probably have heard. And the issue isn't necessarily that; it's what's contributing to it, what's causing it. What are some of the things that we can do about that weight problem? Because not only is it a weight problem for the adults of this world, but there's a bigger problem when it comes to our children. 1/3 of our kids in this country are overweight, and if you're a parent, unfortunately, the statistic is if you have an overweight child, 60% of those children are bullied on a daily basis at school simply because of their weight. That's a problem. And, when we get into this issue of breakfast, there's a lot of back and forth as to whether or not this is a contributor to this issue. So, the biggest issue I want to talk about here is this wonderful diet cycle. And you're probably thinking to yourself right now, okay, so what does the diet cycle have to do with breakfast? And trust me when I say I'm going to get there. But this is a big issue because unfortunately what ends up happening to people is they get on this cycle every January or every time they want to go on a system. And the whole reason why they start on this cycle is because they have certain belief systems that are built in. We've done trainings in the past on nutritional myths. And I'm, one of the things I've said in the past is those nutritional myths are a contributing factor as to why people fail before they begin, because they just know these things to be true. Well, this diet cycle is true for 98% of Americans that are trying a weight loss regimen. In ID Life, we really try to talk to people about it's a fat loss muscle gain program, not a weight loss program. That's really what you got to focus on. But I want to make sure that everyone is successful. So today's topic is really trying to address that issue. Because, see, this is what happens to most people when they're going to start a new program or they're trying on, to get their body healthy. They have the before weight, they have the after weight, and then they have the after weight. In other words, I hear people all the time say, I've lost the same 30 pounds 3 times, but unfortunately, every time I gained it back, I gained it plus some. There's a reason behind that. And it is undoubtedly true that there's over 100 independent studies out there that have linked skipping breakfast with an increased risk of obesity. Undoubtedly, that is in fact true. I mean, that they exist. People have linked the two together. Now, what's interesting about that is also it is, according to the National Weight Control Registry, and if you've never looked at that website before, you might want to. There's some interesting facts on there about people that have lost substantial amounts of weight and kept it off for a long time. But one of the things that they found statistically was that of the people that had lost more than 30 pounds and kept it off for over a year, those people ate breakfast on a regular basis. But see, what happens is when you get into these types of issues and when you start talking about breakfast, one of the things that you would think is a no-brainer is breakfast is the most important meal of the day. We've heard it our whole life. But really, there is a controversy. See, there really is a controversy because there's all kinds of new data, there's all kinds of new scientific studies out there questioning whether or not you have to eat breakfast. And of course, one of the greatest new diet fads out there is the intermittent fasting concept, when you can literally have a window of opportunity, usually a 6 to 8 hour window of opportunity when you're going to eat all of your meals. But, this really is an issue. But unfortunately, what happens when we start this fight and you have all of this split down the middle, because it truly is split down the middle as to whether or not breakfast is necessary or the most important meal of the day, it's a fight where nobody wins. Because, see, unfortunately, what most people don't appreciate or understand is both camps are right and both camps are wrong. See, and it's hard for me to explain what I mean by that, but I'm going to today. I'm actually going to show you why the people that say breakfast is the most important meal of the day are right, and those people that say breakfast isn't necessary are also right, because it's how you ask the question in the context. See, unfortunately, like most things out there, like most food programs, like most weight loss programs, like most foods that you see on the counter that have fat-free, diet-free, and all these other issues, it depends on how you ask the question as to whether or not somebody's right or wrong. And unfortunately, when two different people say different things, they think both of them one of them has to be right, one of them has to be wrong. But unfortunately, in this particular situation, what you're going to see today is both are right, but also both are wrong. And I'm going to show you why. Let's start out with this. And this is real science-y, but really what you deal with is there's two different ways of looking as to whether or not breakfast is the most important meal of the day. One of them is based upon observational studies. These are people that, basically get people and ask them questions about whether or not they eat breakfast or not, and then observe things about the people that say, yes, they eat breakfast on a regular basis. And then you have the other people that are saying, okay, well, we need a randomized study. We need something so you can actually correlate the observations that you see to the fact that they ate breakfast or not. So let's look at first the observational study reports. Most observational studies find that people that eat breakfast have, more health conscious attitudes. They engage in physical activity on a more regular basis. They maintain a healthier weight and are more likely to maintain weight loss over long periods of time. Now, these are observations. These are, scientists that have talked to people that eat breakfast on a regular basis, and this is what they've seen. Now, they've also seen that people that skip breakfast are more likely to be overweight, smoke more, drink more alcohol, and exercise less. Now, when you see these studies, what you have is you have the randomized camp saying, okay, well, that's great and fine. That's what you're observing. But there, you cannot discern a direct correlational difference between eating or not eating breakfast and better health. The whole idea there is the scientists are saying, if you do a double blind and you do all these other factors and you try to get to a scientific result, you can't prove that people are healthier simply because they skip breakfast. And because you can't prove that they're healthier, then you can't say that there's a direct correlation between health and eating breakfast. Well, Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Unfortunately, what we do as Americans is we are on the side of the breakfast or not to breakfast, depending on our own personal choices. And see, if we choose not to eat breakfast for whatever reason, time being the number one, or whatever the case may be, we then believe the side that says, well, there's no proof. Or if you are a breakfast eater, you're on the side of, well, I believe this because this is the case and the science proves it. Unfortunately, what ends up happening is depending on what our preference is, we have a scientific camp that we can rely on to justify our reason. And then, of course, we have that thing to fall back on. But if you dig deeper and you actually understand what breakfast is doing for us, you might come to a different conclusion. And that's what the purpose of today is. We're going to try to give you that information. Undoubtedly, more than 50% of people skip breakfast every morning. Okay, that is a fact. That is something that people just walk out of the house and they don't do it. So let's look at some things. Myth or fact? Skipping breakfast helps with weight loss. What's interesting about this is it's both a myth and a fact. See, because what you have to do is you have to understand, are you looking at weight loss or are you trying to lose fat and gain muscle? See, anybody can lose weight by skipping meals. It's not just breakfast. I mean, you skip enough dinners, you can lose weight. But unfortunately, what are you actually losing? See, the body is a complex system, and in fact, what it does is when it's under stress, especially in the morning after going an entire evening of not consuming any water or food, one of the things it is it goes into that catabolic state, lean muscle, as a way to fuel your efforts, whatever you're doing during the day. So you very well may be losing weight, but in reality what you're losing is you're losing lean muscle, not the fat that you're trying to lose. You very well may be losing some fat at the same time, but you're also losing that lean muscle. Whereas if you do it a different way, you may actually be losing fat and gaining muscle, which is the appropriate point. Now, why do I bring this up? Why do I talk about this particular issue? Well, people have this misconception that muscle weighs more than fat. Galileo proved a long time ago that a pound is a pound, Leaning Tower of Pisa and all, with feathers and rocks. But the biggest issue that you need to understand is a pound of muscle is going to burn 7 to 10 calories a day. A pound of fat is going to burn 2 to 3 calories a day. See, if we're skipping breakfast and our body is fueling our day on our lean muscle because it doesn't have the fuel necessary to push us through, then what we're doing is we're losing that muscle that is increasing our metabolic burn. It's increasing the amount that we burn on a daily basis, and it's preserving that slower metabolic compound that we call fat, So in other words, what's happening is as a result of us skipping that meal, skipping that breakfast, we are actually slowing down our metabolism. Just one of the effects of what the choice that we're making. So are we losing weight? Absolutely. You will lose weight because you're consuming less calories. That's a whole different discussion as to whether or not that's a healthy thing to do or not. But the reality is, what kind of weight are you actually losing? Are you losing the weight that you want? Or are you losing the kind of weight that you'd actually like to keep? Because that's, in fact, stoking your metabolism. Myth or fact number 2, Americans have a snacking problem. Well, this is absolutely a fact. No doubt about it. Our average daily intake right now is about 2,375 calories across the U.S. And remember, this is an average. But the men's daily snacking habit has now rose to 586 calories. Women are at 421. We lovingly refer to this as the 4th meal of the day. But what's a contributing cause of this? Why have these snacks gotten so out of hand? Why do we have this wonderful increase in the caloric count, if you will, of all of the snacking that we're grabbing? And food is a part of it. What's in the food is part of it. But let's look a little bit different. See, what happens is when our bodies are not being fed, okay, so we're skipping breakfast again, okay, we have certain hormones in our system. The hormones in our system are what we call ghrelin and leptin. Ghrelin is basically saying we're hungry. Leptin is saying we're full, or satiety, whichever word you want to use. So these two work together. But unfortunately, when we skip breakfast in the morning, what happens is ghrelin kind of takes over and leptin kind of goes to sleep. So, if you can imagine, you have this insatiable appetite that is now going to start happening, and you're going to just be famished. So by the time you actually start looking at things, these are the results. See, people who skip breakfast every day eat 30% less fruits, 45% less vegetables. They eat also 40% more candy or sweets, and drink 55% more soda and other types of sugary beverages. These are facts. This is just what happens. And that leptin-ghrelin response has a lot to do with that. But in reality, what you need to think about it is this. When we skip breakfast in the morning, one of the things that we do is we cut that ghrelin monster loose on all of those sugary snacks, on all that stuff that we want to consume. So as a result, we're reaching for those bags of chips. We're reaching for that candy dish. We're going after the Cokes and the sugary drinks and the sports drinks that are laced with sugar. We just have this insatiable appetite for salts and sugars as a result of us being what I lovingly refer to as being hangry. That's hungry and angry. So you skip the breakfast and there you are. Now, one of the things you should know, though, is people that have a high protein breakfast actually have been shown to significantly improve appetite control and reduce unhealthy snacking. It's an interesting little fact, that's uncontrovertible. So one of the things, if you really want to, kind of reduce that hunger craving, reduce those snacking habits that you may have, and basically help with appetite control, is have yourself a high protein breakfast and watch how that habit that you formed of snacking and how lunchtime, when it finally gets there, you have that uncontrollable appetite and that ghrelin monster takes over, how you might actually be able to control that a little bit better throughout the day and help keep you on pace of your goals. Myth or fact? Kids need to start their day with a good breakfast. Now, this one, I will tell you, is extremely important. And I want to make sure everyone hears this one, because remember, 1/3 of our children in this country are overweight. Okay, and this controversy of breakfast or not to breakfast affects them as well. And I want to make sure that this topic gets all of the attention that it deserves, because the findings here are just straight out, without a doubt, something that every parent should hear and that everyone needs to pay attention to. See, what happens with kids during the night is their bodies are consuming more nutrients. In fact, it's specifically related to their glucose levels, because they're growing. They're constantly growing. Their bodies are constantly refueling, growing, expanding. When they wake up in the morning, those nutrient levels are depleted. They are basically, they're gone. They need breakfast. It's part of the growth process. In fact, every nutritionist, dietitian you speak to will talk about how kids need a healthy breakfast. In fact, one of the great things about breakfast for kids is they perform 2 times better in school when they have it. It's been shown time and time again, study after study, that they have improved memory and concentration, better attention to detail, increased reasoning skills, and better grades. For that reason alone, our kids should be eating breakfast. But here's the warning, and here's the thing I want to make sure every parent on this webinar hears. If that breakfast consists of junk food or high sugar breakfast, now I'm talking about the sugary cereals, Pop-Tarts, donuts, things like that, you have a 20% reduction in performance. So see, this is one of those situations where both sides are right, to breakfast or not to breakfast. If you're going to feed your children a healthy breakfast, it's a very positive thing to do, because you see all the performance outcomes that can happen, as well as improved grades. But if what you're feeding your children for breakfast is junk food or high sugar breakfast cereals or Pop-Tarts or things like that, what you've actually done is inhibited their performance in a reduction by 20% or more. So make sure you understand that. Now, one of the other things about teens, teens are the world's worst on skipping breakfast. They basically sleep until the last second, throw on their clothes, and go to school. But teens that skip breakfast have a higher body mass index, bigger waistlines, higher obesity rates, and lower grades. This is something we need to talk to our children about. We need to show them how to do things. Remember, kids will do what we do. They will not listen to what we say, especially teenagers. I know. I have 2 of them currently. It's always a fun conversation. You tell them the exact opposite of what you want them to do, and that's exactly what they do, is the exact opposite. So it's one of those funny little behavior issues. But remember, 60% of our kids that are overweight are being bullied on a daily basis. And teenagers are some of the world's worst. I mean, they really are. We really need to provide them the right information, the right nutritional information, especially because they are learning how to eat in the home. They are going to have the rest of their life and their children's lives and their grandchildren's lives that they are going to influence based upon the eating habits that they learned in the home that they're in right now. We have to provide them the right information. We have to show them the importance of breakfast. We need to show them the importance of taking control of their nutritional health now. And remember, I keep saying we have to show them, because we ourselves as parents have to do the same thing. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of them. Myth or fact? Skipping breakfast increases risk of disease. Well, there's some more, very recent studies out about this one, especially from friends at Harvard and other places that have found a link between skipping breakfast and certain increases in the risk of disease. But right now, as we sit here in this country, 48% of the people suffer from cardiovascular disease. That's right. Almost half of Americans suffer from cardiovascular disease right now. But what's interesting about that stat is 64% plus already suffer from symptoms of heart disease. See, this is a testament to what we do in this country. I was giving a presentation last night, and I was trying to tell people, I can't tell you how many times I've heard from people say, I'm going to wait till something happens, then I'll do something about it. Unfortunately, that's the mindset of most people. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing until it breaks, and then I'll change. Then I'll do something about it. Why do we wait till it breaks? When you're talking about cardiovascular disease, 1 in 10 people, the day that they found out they had heart disease is the day they died. You may not get a second chance. And these are the stats. These are staggering. This is a staggering amount of information. 48% already suffer from disease and 64% already have symptoms. This is crazy. But, when you skip breakfast, here's some facts. You have an 18% greater risk of having a stroke, but you also have a 27% greater risk of developing heart disease and or having a heart attack simply by skipping breakfast. So if you're on the skipping breakfast or not skipping breakfast camp, and and whatever your belief system is, but you are somebody that has heart disease, do you really want to take this chance? Do you really want to take the chance when you have these numbers? Do you want to increase your risk of having a stroke or heart attack or heart disease simply by making the decision that you don't think you have time to have breakfast in the morning? It just doesn't make any sense. Let's talk about diabetics. 100 plus million Americans are diabetic or pre-diabetic based upon information that we had that's now 3 years old. 28% don't even know they have it. Childhood diabetes is so out of control now, as you can see. 5,000 reported cases in 2010 and 208,000 reported cases in 2015. Childhood diabetes is so out of control, we actually dropped a term from our vocabulary. See, because type 2 used to be called adult onset diabetes. But childhood diabetes, type 2 diabetes specifically, is so rampant now that now all we do is call it type 2 diabetes. We dropped the whole adult onset. because now it's developing in children in very, very young ages. Now, why do I mention this as it applies to breakfast? Well, you have a 28% greater risk of developing diabetes if you skip breakfast. So if you're diabetic, pre-diabetic, or you have diabetes that runs in your family because genetically you're predisposed to it, if you skip breakfast, if you believe in that camp of skipping breakfast, you now have increased your chances of contracting the disease that you're trying to avoid by 28%. So is it even an option for you? Do you have the luxury of saying you don't have time for breakfast if in fact this is you? And remember, this is affecting 1/3 of the U.S. population. In fact, it could be worse than that. See, last year, UCLA came out with a study that said 55% of Californians are diabetic or pre-diabetic. 55% of Californians. That's a state that all of us consider to be healthy. And they're saying over half their population is diabetic. The numbers that we have from 3 years ago are 1 in 3 are diabetic or pre-diabetic. But here's the thing that you should know. If you skip breakfast and you're diabetic or pre-diabetic, it has been scientifically shown that you will have an inability to maintain your blood sugar levels throughout the day. You know, you're going to have a higher blood sugar level all throughout the day if you skip breakfast. In fact, they actually came out with a chart that kind of showed what happens for those people that eat breakfast. You can see how it's kind of that yellow. It's kind of small little spikes, but for the most part, it's staying pretty steady. And those people that skip breakfast, you can see that 1 p.m. spike, and you see the crash afterwards. This is what people are doing to themselves. This are people that are diabetic and pre-diabetic, what they're doing when they skip breakfast. I mean, this is scientific, guys. Okay, this is just the information I'm providing to you, is providing you information that if you suffer from this disease, which camp you're in could actually directly affect your health. So if you are one of those people that, you know, is deciding that, you know, is breakfast something I need to do or not to do? You know, let's look at the numbers. Diabetics, that's 33% of the population. Heart disease is 64% of the population. Obesity is 74% of the population. And our kids, hey, they're going to perform 2 times better in school if they have a healthy meal. Is there really a question? Is there really a question as to whether or not you should eat breakfast or not? You know, because if you just take obesity, heart disease, and diabetes, we probably touch, at a minimum, 80% of Americans. So is it really a 50-50 split? Is it really one of those controversies about breakfast or not to breakfast? When you're talking about a majority of the population, a vast majority of the population has a medically scientific basic reason to be eating breakfast every morning. See, that's the biggest issue for me, because the question that, you know, people always want to argue about is it healthy or not healthy? Well, it depends on who you are. If you're a teenager or young 20s and you're in perfect health and, you know, you basically have the body mass index of a college athlete, you know, maybe you can skip breakfast and be okay. But if you have any of these diseases, if you have any of these issues, if you're a child and you want to perform your best, breakfast is not a question. This isn't a controversy. This isn't a topic of discussion. This is something that you need to be doing to save your health. So, what do we know? Skipping breakfast decreases long-term weight loss goals. That's been shown. It's going to increase unhealthy snacking. Been shown over and over and over again. It's going to decrease kids' ability to perform their best in school. That's study after study. It increases the risk of developing and dying from heart disease. It increases the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, and it also reduces your ability to maintain sugar or manage your sugar levels. This is the thing that is happening every time we skip breakfast. This is what's happening to us when we make that decision that we're going to listen to the camp that says skipping breakfast is a good idea. This is what happens is when we find the justifiable reason for our own personal decision that we don't have time or that we don't want to take the time to eat breakfast. This is just... it's asinine, really. But when we talk about time, you know, this is the number one excuse. You know, time is the excuse that we all use for everything. You know, last week we talked about sleep, and we said, you know, the way that people compromise on their sleep is they say, well, I just don't have enough time. I have too much to do. I can sleep later. But we showed the health effects of that. Now, you know, we're talking about breakfast. And the number one reason people give for not eating breakfast is they don't have time. I'm telling you, if you have any of these issues that we've talked about, if you have concerns about your health, especially heart disease, diabetes, obesity, any of these, time is not the issue. It's not the excuse. It is something that you have to make. It's something that you have to make sure that you take the time in your day to make sure that you're getting the nutrients that you need so that you can be healthy. And if time is really your issue, you know what? at IdeaLife, we have the IdeaLife experience. We've taken time out of the equation. Why? Because all you need is a shaker cup that we provide you and the protein shakes that we give you. And guess what? You're going to get a high protein meal that's going to take you less than 1 minute to prepare. Scoop into the shaker and your favorite liquid, be it water, milk, almond milk, coconut milk, whatever the case may be. You want to mix some other things into it, knock yourself out, you can do that. But the whole idea is you're going to get a high protein meal, which we showed earlier. High protein breakfast is going to help you maintain appetite control and reduce those snacking cravings that we talked about. And it's at least going to get your day started out right. And if you're one of those people that is really rushed and don't have a lot of time in the morning, we've now shown you a way in less than a minute that you can at least get something into your body and get it going in the right direction. So time is no longer the issue. I really hope people have gotten some benefit out of today. I really hope that we've kind of dispelled the conflict, if you will, between breakfast or not to breakfast. If you want to learn more, next week we're going to tackle another topic that is one that is near and dear to our hearts here at IdeaLife. It's one size fits no one. This topic is going to discuss the one-size-fits-all approach of so many things out there, especially when you're talking about nutrition, when you're talking about diets, when you're talking about lifestyle. One size fits no one. And we're going to talk about that next week, about all of the aspects in our lives where we try to fit our square body into that round peg and it just doesn't work for us, and how we're all individually designed and we all have individual needs. So until next week, this is Mark Bennett on behalf of IdeaLife. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to next time. Thanks.